Hello again, and thanks for joining me. Now, in this tutorial, I'll be telling you about how to adjust the settings on your camera so that your film is correctly exposed to the light. My suggestion is you learn about how these aspects work and how they interact, rather than letting any automatic options on your camera do all the decision making for you. Choose manual settings rather than automatic wherever you can. That's how you learn how these various factors interact together and what impact they have on how your finished photographs will actually look. There are three main things that govern how much light gets onto the film in your camera. One is the speed of the film. This will always be printed on the box your film comes in from the manufacturer. Now, as I said before, I like Ilford FP4 for black and white shots, and this has a manufacturer's speed of 125. Secondly, there's the shutter speed. In other words, how long your camera shutter stays open when you press the button to take a photograph. Now, in general, these are quite short fractions of a second, such as 1/60th of a second, 1/500th of a second, and so on. The third thing is your f-stop. Now, as I change the f-stop on the top of the lens, the iris inside the lens closes down, and this affects the amount of light getting through the lens onto your film. Don't worry about what these various numbers mean. I've been making photos for 50 years now. I still don't know what they all mean. I just know what they do. So to recap, that's film speed, shutter speed, and f-stop. So how do you know how to set the right film speed, shutter speed, and f-stop onto your camera? Now, you may well have an automatic camera that does these settings for you. I believe, as I said before, the best way to start learning how to take better photos is to choose manual mode and learn how to set these for yourself and see how they interact. Now, this is where your other invaluable piece of kit comes in, your light meter. Now, many analog cameras, even from 50 odd years ago, have a built-in light meter, which is perfectly fine to use. And we'll come back to built-in meters in a later video. Personally, and this is my opinion, I prefer to use an external light meter. And to illustrate how it all fits together, I'll assume you have one or can get your hands on one. The light meters I've always used are either a Sekonic like this one, or a Weston like this one. You can usually pick one of these up on eBay at a reasonable price. I got this one last week for 14 quid, I think. The first thing to do is to set the film speed on the meter. As I said before, it's black and white FP4, so I'll set it at the manufacturer's recommended speed of 125, which is what it says on the box. Next, hold the light meter next to the subject you want to photograph. I've used myself as a subject for this example. So this part, which is called the invercone, is being lit by the same amount of light as my ugly mug. Press this button and you'll see the needle move. Then release the button and the needle will stop at or next to a number. Now, in this example, it is stopped at the number 7. Move the dial.
Right, we're on.
To that number. That will then give a number of combinations of shutter speeds and f-stops. And the important thing is that any one of those combinations will let the same amount of light into your camera. And that's a pretty crucial idea I'd like you to get your head around. You can choose any of these combinations and you'll get the same exposure, according to the situation you're in and how you want your photo to look. You may want a very fast shutter speed, say 1,000th of a second, if you're photographing, for example, a Formula One race. That will mean you'll need a more open f-stop to compensate for the very short shutter speed time. Conversely, you may decide you want to try and get an impression of the speed your Formula One cars are going by having a slightly blurry effect. So choose a slower shutter speed and a narrower f-stop. Now, there's another very important thing to tell you about f-stops. The f-stop you choose will have a major effect on how your photos will look. It will directly affect the focus and the sharpness of your photograph. Now, without going into all the technicalities, the simplest way to explain depth of field is how much of your photo is in sharp focus and how much of it you choose to have out of focus. Now, why would you want to have some of your photo out of focus, you might well ask? I think the easiest way to explain it is to show you a couple of examples of pictures I've taken, rather than go into all the whys and wherefores and all the technicalities. Now, after many, many years of working in the studio, I've come to prefer to do portraits in daylight wherever possible, with a very shallow depth of field and a very out of focus background. For this one, I chose a mild telephoto lens and a very wide f-stop, I think it was f4, which gave me only her eyelashes and her hair in focus. Now, the background is still there, but it's completely out of focus, so it looks real, but doesn't distract from her face. And her face is the whole point of the photograph, after all. Here's a different type of portrait. This time I wanted everything in focus. The young lady herself, the crops, the tractor trails going off into the distance, and of course the sky. So I chose a wide angle lens and a small f-stop, I think it was around f16 or 22, with a correspondingly slower shutter speed. Now, I'm aware I've given you a boatload of information in this video. It'll just take you a few goes to understand it all. Just get out there and experiment on your friends, or your loved ones, or your kids. I tend to concentrate on portraits because that's what I love doing. I really love photographing people. You can photograph anything you want: children, babies, animals, landscapes, food, still lives. The list is literally infinite. And have some fun. And when you get your prints from the session, try and relate what the print looks like back to what the reality was, because they're never the same thing. Reality is 3D and photographs are 2D. And as always, if you have any questions as a result of watching this, please put them in the comments section and I'll try to answer your query as soon as I can. Likewise, if any topics you'd like me to cover, please do let me know and we'll make a subsequent video. Thank you.